We used to talk a lot about Delores Cannon. She was the hypnotist lady who hypnotized hundreds, maybe thousands of people. And then once they were hypnotized, she would talk to um, a consciousness that would come through when people were hypnotized. And the consciousness said that a lot of people here on the planet are backdrop people. In other words, they're not real people. They're made of pure spirit, and they are just like background actors in a movie. They're never talked to. They're just there, so they look like real people, but they're not. That might be a hard thing for you to consider, but then the other weird thing is this story about the 144,000. This seems to be a number that's been around since maybe the time of the Bible. 144,000, as in there's 144,000 souls, and the rest of them are soulless. So maybe the backdrop people don't have souls, they're pure spirit. But they appear to be real to you. Maybe we have to go back to why I'm going crazy trying to figure this out. It's because, okay, the thing that was bothering me today was, you know, let's say before 1900, when, there was no cars. There were no cars before around 1900, like maybe 1890, there was some amateur electric cars, but before that time, everything was horse and ox cart, or oxes and ox carts. It was animal powered transportation. And what I'm trying to figure out is how did they do snow removal before they had gasoline and diesel powered trucks with snowplows on them? You try and imagine Chicago, Detroit, Moscow, Toronto, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Halifax, Winnipeg. Did I say Montreal? Quebec City? When these cities got snowstorms, how did they plow the streets? Because modern day cities, you have got enormous horsepower, enormous diesel powered snowplows. And they plow the city streets, and they shove the snow up onto the bank, onto the side of the road. And then they come around with front-end loaders, and they take front-end loaders and they load up enormous quantities of snow and put it into dump trucks, and the dump trucks haul it away out of the center of town. But before they had all this heavy equipment, you had horses, oxes, and that's what pulled carriages and wagons. Now, in a huge snowstorm, how did you make those roads passable for horse and buggy? Maybe it was horse and sleigh. I already talked about this. This is just bothering me. I can't see how you would clear the streets of Chicago or Boston or New York all winter long with horses. Horses don't push like a snowplow does. Snowplow's got a plow on the front. Horses can pull. So how are they going to pull a scraper blade? And where did all the snow go? They just pushed it up onto the sidewalks. And they didn't have snow blowers, so everybody just shoveled it. Where did they put it? No one hauled it away from downtowns. And then you had all of the residential streets and the highways, or the roads. How did they keep the roads between the cities open? How did they feed all these people? That's another one I have a hard time understanding, is like this London, England. Imagine, I don't know, before they had trains. I don't know when the first trains were. They were steam powered. But let's say, I don't know, let's go with 1100, the year 1100. You had horses and oxes. And you had a whole pile of people in London City. How did people eat in London? How did they bring in food from the surrounding area to feed the people in London? Because it would take a long time on a horse, trotting along, pulling a horse cart full of food. It would take you a long time to come from a rural area to come to London. And, what about, how did they live through the winter? I mean, I live in Canada, and in the winter, the food comes from way far south. Way far south in the winter. And, when there was the days of the fur trade, what the hell did the people eat all winter long? Did they just, shoot deer and moose? Before they had railways, how did they get flower to these places. And you know, you have one harvest time, it's in the fall. And if you didn't have trains, then how did you, get all this grain harvested with a horse? I've seen some of these pictures of, apparently this stuff was used, but how did they feed millions of people on planet Earth in those days? So maybe Delores Cannon is right, that this planet that we think has got all this history is we're being lied to about it. I think this world is a hologram, a holodeck like in Star Trek. And that's what Delores Cannon would be implying about these phony people, these backdrop people. They're not real. They look real, you can't tell the difference, but they're not real. They're being run like a video game, you've got non-playing characters in video games. And that's what these backdrop people are in our reality. They're not playing, they just look like they're there. You go in a grocery store, they're pushing a push cart, but you don't interact with them. You think that they're real people, but they're not. And how about people that you went to school with? How many of them were real? Only the people that you kind of had relationships with. The other ones were backdrop people, and backdrop people perhaps could talk. It's very difficult to try and figure this out. It's very convoluted. Delores Cannon's books are called The Convoluted Universe. But if you watch Star Trek The Next Generation, a lot of episodes in there use the holodeck. And they just show you that when you leave the holodeck, those computer-generated holographic characters, they just disappear. And as far as the 144,000, it's just a number. I mean, is that how many people are real here? It's enough to drive you paranoid. Who put us in this hologram? And what's the point of us being in this hologram? Where were we before the hologram, and where do we go after the hologram? But anyways, you can watch some of Delores Cannon's videos on YouTube. They say that she's dead, but I don't know if she's dead. She might be a hologram. And her books are available. You can get The Convoluted Universe, multiple volumes, and you can waste a lot of time reading. Why waste your time? Because even when people read these holographic Convoluted Universe books, it doesn't help you figure it all out. How are you going to figure it all out? You just have to keep watching very closely and meditating and coming up with, that didn't make sense. Like there was a gopher here in my backyard a couple, 3 years ago. And I could never figure out how the gopher survived through 7 months of deep cold in the winter in Canada. Someone says hibernate. I looked into hibernating. The more you look into hibernating, the more you're going, it doesn't make sense. I think they're holograms. Gophers and things in Canada.